Do you have free will? That is, do you have control over your actions such that you're responsible for performing them, deserving of praise or blame as the case may be? Well, some philosophers answer yes, and others answer no. Philosophical defenses of these answers typically include a defense of a judgment about whether free action and moral responsibility are compatible or incompatible with the truth of determinism. Now, my purpose for this video is to briefly explain one objection to libertarian views of free will. I'm not defending the objection here, I'm just explaining it, okay? I want to know what you guys think of it. This video is purely explanatory then, and I'll be drawing on the first chapter of Al Mealy's book, Free Will and Luck, published with Oxford University Press. So this guy right here, this is Al Mealy, and this is his book, Free Will and Luck, published with Oxford University Press. And I'll also be drawing on Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy entries written by Greg Caruso, Randolph Clark, and Justin Capes. So let's dig in. So let's first get some definitions on the table. First is determinism. This is the thesis that there is, at any instant, exactly one physically possible future. More fully, at any instant, exactly one future is compatible with the state of the universe at that instant and the laws of nature. So essentially, the state of the universe in the past plus the laws of nature strictly entail every single fact about the future. Secondly is compatibilism. This is the thesis that free action and moral responsibility are compatible with the truth of determinism. Now, a compatibilist may or may not hold that there are free and morally responsible human beings, and may or may not hold that determinism is true. Third, incompatibilism. So this is the thesis that neither free action nor moral responsibility is compatible with the truth of determinism. Again, an incompatibilist may or may not hold that there are free and morally responsible human beings, and may or may not hold that determinism is true. And finally, libertarianism. This is the conjunction of incompatibilism and the thesis that some human beings act freely and are morally responsible for some of what they do. Now, libertarians have the option of endorsing either stronger, non-historical requirements on free action or weaker historical requirements. So, for instance, they can claim that an agent's freely performing some action A at time t. That's going to be free only if, at t, the agent could have done otherwise than A at t. But a libertarian could also claim instead that an agent who could not have done otherwise at t than performing A, they might nevertheless freely perform A at t, so long as they earlier performed some relevant free action or actions at a time or times at which they could have done otherwise. And so in that sense, the later action is sort of derivatively free. It sort of gets to count as free because it's suitably related to earlier actions that the agent made for which they could have done otherwise. So with those preliminaries out of the way, let's consider the problem of luck for libertarians. Agents as control, that's the yardstick by which the bearing of luck on their freedom and moral responsibility is measured. When luck, good or bad, is problematic, that's because it seems to impede agents' control over themselves or to highlight important gaps or shortcomings in their control. Now, it might seem that to the extent that it is causally open, whether or not, for example, an agent intends in accordance with their considered judgment about what is best to do, they lack some control over what they intend. And it may be claimed that a positive deterministic connection between considered best judgment and intention would be more conducive to freedom and moral responsibility. Now, that last claim, of course, will be regarded as a non-starter by anyone who thinks that freedom and moral responsibility require agential control and that determinism is incompatible with such control. But those who hold that view face a potentially significant problem, a problem that we're going to illustrate with a little fable. Meet Diana. She is a libertarian goddess in an indeterministic universe, and she wants to build rational, free human beings who are capable of being very efficient agents. She believes that decisions, typically decisions to perform action A, are causes of actions that execute them, And she sees no benefit in designing agents who have a chance of not even trying to do A when they have decided to do A. The indeterministic fabric of Diana's universe allows her to build a deterministic connection between decisions and corresponding attempts. And she does. Now, because Diana is a relatively typical libertarian, she believes that free decisions cannot be deterministically caused, even by something that centrally involves a considered judgment that it would be best to do A. She also believes that agents can make free decisions based on such judgments. So Diana designs her agents in such a way that even though they have just made such a judgment, and even though the judgment persists in the agents, they might decide contrary to it. Given Diana's brand of libertarianism, she believes that whenever agents freely perform an action of deciding to A, they could have freely performed some alternative action. They could have refrained from doing A, that is. She worries that her design does not accommodate this. Her worry, more specifically, is that if the difference between the actual world, in which one of her agents judges it best to do A and then at time t decides accordingly, and any possible world with the same past up to t and the same laws of nature in which the agent makes an alternative decision while the judgment persists, is a matter of luck. So if she thinks that that difference between these worlds is a matter of luck, well, then the agent in question just doesn't freely make that decision in the possible world W. Diana suspects that the agents making that alternative decision rather than deciding in accordance with their best judgment is just a matter of bad luck, or more precisely, of worse luck in W for the agent than in the actual world. In other words, Diana suspects that the difference between W and the actual world is a matter of luck or chance. After all, because the worlds do not diverge before the agent decides, there is no difference in the agent to account for the difference in decisions. This suspicion leads Diana to suspect that, in W, the agent should not be blamed for the decision the agent makes there. And that the agent should not be blamed, she thinks, indicates that they did not freely make the decision, right? She believes that if the agent had freely made the decision that they made in W, well, then they would have been morally responsible for it and blameworthy. Now, to understand Diana's worry more fully, we're going to consider another story. As soon as any agent of hers judges it best to do A, objective probabilities for the various decisions open to the agent are set, and the probability of a decision to do A is very high. Larger probabilities get a correspondingly larger segment of a tiny indeterministic neural roulette wheel in the agent's head than do smaller probabilities. So you can see my just brilliant artistic rendition. Mwah, it's so beautiful. So a tiny neural ball bounces along the wheel, and its landing in a particular segment is the agent's making the corresponding decision. When the ball lands in the segment for a decision to do A, its doing so is not just a matter of luck. After all, the design is such that the probability of that happening is like super duper high. But the ball's landing there is partly a matter of luck. And the difference at issue at time t between a world in which the ball lands there at t and a world with the same past and laws of nature in which it lands in a segment for another decision at t is just a matter of luck. Diana can think of nothing that stops her worry from generalizing to all cases of deciding, whether or not the agent makes a judgment about what it is best to do. In the actual world, Johnny decides at time t to do A. In another world with the same laws of nature and the same past, he decides at t not to do A. If there's nothing about Johnny's powers, his capacities, his states of mind, his moral character, and the like, if there's nothing about those in either world that accounts for this difference, then the difference seems to be just a matter of luck. It seems brute, right? There's nothing you can point to in either world to differentially explain the different decisions, since, per our hypothesis, everything else is the same between the two worlds. The only difference between them is in terms of the different decision made. Because everything else remains the same across the worlds, there is quite literally nothing that explains this difference between the worlds. Any factor you point to as an explanation is also present in the other world. Given that neither world diverges from the other in any respect before t, then There is no difference at all in Johnny in these two worlds to account for the difference in his decisions. To be sure, right? I mean, something about Johnny might explain why it's possible for him to decide to do A in the actual world and decide not to do A in another possible world with the same laws and past. That he is an indeterministic decision maker, for instance, might explain that. That's, of course, entirely consistent with the difference in his decisions being just a matter of luck. All libertarians who hold that something's being a free action depends on its being the case that, at the time, the agent was able to do otherwise, should then tell us what it could possibly be about an agent who freely performed A at T, in virtue of which it is true that, in another world with the same past and laws of nature, that agent does freely something else at T. And it's difficult to see how such decisions could be under agential control, given that nothing about the agent varies between such worlds that could explain the different decisions made in those worlds. Anyway, I'm going to give you a summary of this Luck objection. If a decision is non-deterministically caused, and if there remains, until it occurs, a chance that the agent will instead, at that moment, make a different decision, then there's a possible world that is exactly the same as the actual world up until the time of the decision, but in which the agent makes the alternative decision instead. There is then nothing about the agent prior to the decision. Indeed, there's nothing about the world prior to that time that accounts for the difference between the agents making one decision and the agents making the other. The difference then is just a matter of luck. So the argument goes. And if the difference between the agents making one decision and they're instead making another decision is just a matter of luck, well, then surely they can't be responsible for the decision that they make. So now we're going to be just briefly touching on the problem of luck and how it relates to something called rollbacks, or the rollback argument. So the kind of luck with which I've been concerned in this video is called, in the philosophical literature, present chancy luck. So this is because the agent's putatively free decision is chancy. That is, the same decision would fail to occur in many nearby possible worlds. So that's the first reason why it counts as present chancy luck. A second reason is that it's significant for the agent. That is, the agent cares about it, and it has consequences for her life or the lives of those around her in some way. And thirdly, and finally, the circumstantial factor outside of the agent's control occurs just prior to the decision. Now, the circumstantial factor outside of the agent's control is the indeterministic event or events that lead up to her formation of the intention or decision or action or what have you, wherever you want to locate the indeterminism. And so this circumstantial factor is outside of the agent's control, and that occurs just prior to the decision. That is, they're prior to the very means by which the agent exercises control in the first place, namely by making decisions. So Peter Van Inwagen, who is pictured on the right, he makes vivid the lack of control a libertarian agent has, or is alleged to have, given these arguments, over genuinely undetermined events by considering what would happen if God rolled back the relevant stretch of history to some point prior to an undetermined event and then allowed it to unfold once more. Since events would not unfold in the same way on the replay as they did the first time around, since these are genuinely undetermined, of course, and since nothing the agent does or is can ensure which undetermined possibility is realized, the outcome of this sequence, in this case, the agent's decision, is simply a matter of luck. Such luck, proponents of the Luck objection and rollback argument argue, is just responsibility undermining. It undermines the agent's control over the situation, over their decision, over which precise decision they make. And moreover, it seems to undermine their responsibility for making the choices or decisions that they do in fact make. So what do you think? What do you think of this argument, right? Is the Luck objection to libertarianism convincing? Well, I think you should share your thoughts in the comments, and feel free to engage with others' thoughts too. And remember, y'all, of course, if you want to disagree with someone else in the comment section, do it respectfully. I know that's not really that's not the rule on YouTube, but it's my rule. So try to do it respectfully. But anyway, if you enjoy this content and see value in the work I do, please consider subscribing and supporting me on Patreon. By the way, I'll probably be giving away those beautiful and glorious drawings to patrons. I'll probably also write a personal note on the back of them, thanking you guys for your support. So if you want to have a chance at receiving those, and if you want to experience all the other boatloads of goodies for patrons, consider joining the gang. But anyway, I'm Joe Schmid. This is The Majesty of Reason, and peace out.